Hello there. As has obtained in recent weeks, Cameroon once again secured its place on the global news headlines for very uncheerful reasons. From the observed upsurge in violence in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon to the gruesome killing of that 4-month-old baby in Moyuka in the southwest region, it may be safe to conclude that hopes of an end to the Anglophone crisis appear as distant as they are abstract. I'm Tariq Edivan Jr. and this is Newsroom. First things first, the headlines.
The shooting to death of a 4-month-old baby in Moyuka in the southwest region of the country divides public opinion in Cameroon. To the government, armed separatists carry out the act in revenge. In a release signed by the Minister of Communication, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, the father of the child is an ex-Amber boy who abandoned the cause to take on normal life. This version contradicts what the family is saying to the neighbor's family. The military is responsible for the atrocity. 47th edition of the National Day celebrated in Cameroon in colour and fanfare in 8 out of the 10 regions of the country, while Yaoundé, Douala and other towns east of the Mongo reaffirmed national unity. The Anglophone regions of the country witnessed timid celebration and complete absence in other areas. This is the 3rd National Day celebrated at 2 different levels since 2017. In Bamenda, 4 persons killed in 1 week in different locations. The continuous bloodshed in the region has left many questioning if the message of peace preached by Prime Minister Joseph Dongote have been listened to. The population continue to accuse the military and separatist fighters of reigning terror in the region. What explains the continuous tension in the northwest and southwest region of the country remains an unanswered question. This is Newsroom, trusted for information flow and analysis.
Thanks sincerely for having us in your company this weekend. Now, joining me to help make sense out of these and more stories on the program today are 3 men from diverse fields of life. I'll begin by introducing you, Mr. Walang Abang. I come to understand that you are actually an internally displaced person.
Yes, that is true. I'm an internally displaced person who is coping quite all right in Douala. You know, I'm a writer, a publisher, and I'm a leadership coach. And so I'm finding my way, you know, around just a little comfortably. So I feel for the many internally displaced who are here without places. You know, if I had a way, I would help. And I've been trying as much as possible to locate some of them, you know, with friends, with family. Yeah, that is what I can do. I think if we can bring our efforts together, we'll do more for them. Okay,
I'll just briefly introduce you to Elvis Tayon, who is omnipresent on the media in Cameroon and especially television. And, Chana Gildas is a pastor and a military chaplain. We'll come back to you in the next couple of minutes. But first of all, I'll just introduce you this question. On Friday, May the 24th, President Paul Biya signed a couple of decrees relocating and appointing new secretaries general at the 14 urban councils in the country. Would you say that this is an indication that decentralization is going to be fast-tracked? What meaning do you read into the appointment?
Well, personally, as an analyst, you know, I begin to ask myself the question, because the government delegate, you know, the city council is not an element of decentralization. It is rather, you know, it came in a context where multipartism had been launched in Cameroon, and, you know, political parties were pushed, you know, they had the ability, the tendency to gain lots of seats. So for the government to have an in-depth control of these councils, especially the city councils, the big, large councils, the government created the city councils, you know, with a government delegate, who became the super mayor. And if you know, in those days, by 1992, 1991, 1992, many of these councils were lost to the opposition. And the mayors who lost elections were appointed super mayor.
Okay.
It was a little controversial. So I don't think, you know, this move of appointing secretary at this time when the country is calling for a dialogue.
Yes.
You know, I don't like to talk about external forces. I always say I don't like to talk about external forces. We Cameroonians, we know how to solve our problems. We know our problems better than any other person. So at a moment when all the forces is calling for a dialogue, at a moment when even the Prime Minister, you know, went to the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon and announced that the president has sent him to come and inform them that there is going to be dialogue on everything except separation, which means that, you know, federalism could be brought on the table of dialogue.
Okay.
Okay. But at this moment now, they are appointing secretaries general at the urban councils. You know, makes me doubt whether there is this sincerity, whether there are no hidden agendas, you know, concerning this issue of dialogue.
Okay, we're going to talk a whole lot about dialogue and the Prime Minister's recent tour of the Northwest and Southwest regions. I just wanted to note in passing that President Paul Biya actually signed those decrees personally, despite recently delegating signature powers to other subordinates at the presidency. We'll get to talk about that too in the next coming minutes. What is responsible for the snail-paced implementation of decentralization in Cameroon? Some consider the signatures, the appointment of the new SGs at the Urban Council as a speed break to the process.
Well, it should be noted that the SGs have always been there. You know, it is now that these ones, the new ones have been appointed, you know, in 10 city councils that, you know, it's making news.
Because the impression, I asked that question because the impression I get from your first intervention is driving me to the conclusion that, these positions should have been scrapped rather than reinforced.
Sincerely, I don't think it would add anything, you know, towards the dialogue that is much, you know, talked about and much expected by the Cameroonian people, who are willing to have peace now, you know, to precipitate the process towards peace.
Okay.
Yes. So the appointment of the secretaries general at the city councils make Cameroonians to start asking whether there is that willingness, you know, on the part of the government to really sit down and talk peace, you know, and find a way out of this peace. I think there is a lot of, you know, controversy around that this appointment.
But the government showed good faith in February when Prime Minister John Gute signed a decree stepping up the amount, the decentralization allocations to Cameroon's 360 councils from 10 to 50 billion.
Yeah, that, you know, I want to appreciate the effort first. You know, moving from one step to another is something that is laudable.
Okay.
You know, but it was the budget was, all of us know that the budget was largely still insufficient.
Some still call it chicken feed.
Chicken feed, and you know, it was still largely insufficient until now. Those local councils are still complaining. Like I said, you know, this issue of decentralization, I think, you know, it has been there forever, since 1996. It was enshrined in the Constitution in 1996, and the implementation has always been this snail pace, extremely slow, and we are not getting anywhere till now. I think that we should sit and really talk about, you know, rethink Cameroon, talk about the future of this country that we all love. It's not the property of, you know, it's not the exclusivity of one person. Everybody's voice counts.
Thanks for coming once again, Mr. Wala.
Thank you for inviting me.
And just to note in passing that 1996 Constitution actually indicates somewhere that Cameroon is a unitary, decentralized state, whatever that means. Tayong Elvis, welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure to have you here every now and then.
Well, I think we thank God, of course, you know, coming from Buya, where there's always been the headstock in the Southwest region, rather, concerning the issue in America. I think we gathered a lot of information on the ground. But then we'll say greetings to the Christians of Presbyterian Church in Amuliko, of course, who will be seeing their new elders put in place on Sunday. So it's God. Everything we give thanks to God.
Okay. Someone has described you as an omnipresent, staunch critic of the Biya government. Do you accept that kind of tag?
If you say omnipresent, fine.
You're omnipresent on TV.
Omnipresent on TV, fine.
You're a staunch critic of the regime.
When you say staunch critic of the regime, I think I'm just a staunch analyst of the regime. I say not critic because, you know, there are times that if you say critic, it looks like you just see everything wrong. But then we are there to analyze issues and for the regime to put things in order. Unfortunately, the regime doesn't see it that way. But I think some persons in the regime see the role we play as a role that keeps the regime awake and to do the right things, even though the regime is still refusing to do the right things.
Do you get calls from the regime barons from time to time telling you that you're overdoing it or asking you to do something else?
Well,
has it happened to you before?
Obviously, we've had several anonymous calls, calls of threats, and calls of, be very careful, calls of, we can look after you, we can run after, we can get to you. But as I said earlier, when you carry out analysis based on truth and facts, especially when you know what you're doing, you need not shiver, because I've been telling people that people should not ever dream that some of them are more patriotic than others.
Okay.
People should not be dreaming that they're more patriotic than others, because the way we do, if you hear the issue of omnipresence, it takes money for you to move from one area to another. That's my own modest contribution I can give to the nation by offering what I think the state taught me, because I studied in Cameroon, state institutions, so I think that what they taught me is what I'm giving back to them. So I think it's just simply playing my own role. That's just it.
You're not scared, are you?
No, not scared, because one, I know that what I say is the truth. Secondly, I know that I move with a living God. So those two factors, it's true, people are afraid on my behalf. Also, even my family members, they're scared. People, our friends are scared. They call me, they can arrest you. I said no. So long as Jesus came and carried out work for humanity and was persecuted, rather, it means I myself, so long as I'm convinced, because I'm convinced I'm doing the right thing, if I sit today and the police vehicle comes in and say, get in, I'll get in.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this before we move on to your leading question. Would you say the Anglophone crisis has placed the practice of journalism in Cameroon on trial?
Very correct. It has really done so. And when I say it has done so, it's for the simple fact that it is within this crisis that we are able to know exactly who is a journalist.
Okay.
Because we have what we call armchair journalism, and you have those who move to the field to find out facts.
Isn't it journalism, armchair journalism?
Yeah, well, see, armchair journalism is not like the kind of issue where you're in the office all the time. You don't make an effort to go out, probably stretch your hand. Even something that is happening, you could be in Aqua, and there's an accident just next door. You still not go there, but you want to learn maybe on social media.
Okay.
Tell you things that you would have taken efforts to go there. So in that case, the challenge some of us take is because we go across border. And that's why I said I've always been appreciating both the fighters and the military, because that shows high sense of responsibility. Because there are times I'm calling crossfire. Maybe there are times I'm calling crossfire when you want to go to Ndop, crossfire when you're going to Kumba. But I think both parties, to an extent, have always been able to give that respect. When I get to a military place, when I'm going to Manfair, you get to a military checkpoint, as you present yours, they say, oh, no. They give you at least some respect. When you get to an amber checkpoint and you present yourself, they give you some respect. So I think to an extent, I will appreciate both of them at least for giving us some respect, despite the fact that the ground is very hot.
That's one rare occasion I hear you showing praise on the Cameroon army. In a recent report, and that's how we just switch on to your leading question. In a recent report, the Boyabe Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa remarks that 260 villages have been partially or completely set ablaze in Cameroon, in the English-speaking parts of Cameroon, since the start of the crisis. Yeah. This is scandalous. It's scary.
Yes, it's very scary, and the issue with the reports out there is something which is verifiable. When you get to villages like Kwakwa, the villages along the road, you get to villages like Ekiliwindi where people are no longer there. You get to parts of Ndu, Banso itself. It's a call for concern. And then when you go to Alanjo, where you had a recent case of the burning of houses along that stretch of road, it tells you that it is a call for concern. And I said earlier that I don't understand those who are technical advisors to the Ministry of Defense, but they are definitely not doing their job, because I said earlier, if the more you burn the houses, obviously, if you take an average of a home has at least 2 or 3 boys averagely from that, or cousins who are from that home. So if you take 200 houses that you burn, assume that each day you burn about 10 houses. If you burn 10 houses and you kill 5 Ambazonian fighters, automatically that number will triple, because in each house, out of the 4 or 5 boys who are there, at least 2 might get angry. If you hear their mother has been burnt in the house alive, or your old parent that you come probably to hustle for them, there's a tendency that some of them will get back to the bushes to revenge against the military. So the tendency is that
radicalization as a result of the burning of the houses. But you expect the government to issue a retort to these claims very soon?
A retort of the...
To debunk the information from the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa?
Well, the issue is that the government has been doing that. If the government comes out, I will not be surprised. But the question now is, when you debunk an information without adequate proofs to counteract the information, it becomes questionable, especially information, things that are visible on the ground. So the government could equally come to do that, but I think it has gone far because away from the Human Rights Center, what they did, I think other organizations linked directly or indirectly to other international organizations have done the same.
Okay. And
so the reports are tallying with what other institutions have, and even what Amnesty International has on the rest. So it becomes difficult. You could be debunking the institution, but then the facts are on the ground, and people can go to the ground and count houses. And this explains why you have the influx, thousands in Douala, thousands in the West region. If they had their houses, it would have been normal. And that's the reason why many people keep asking, when we come with the Commission of Disarmament, I tell people to leave the bushes. The next thing is,
where do they go to?
Where do they go to? Because those who are in the bushes, remember, it's not only fighters.
Okay.
Because the Disarmament Commission is for those who are fighters.
Right.
Now, how about those whose houses have been burnt and they are not fighters, and they are in Kokoboma, they are in Kiliwindi, far off in the bushes, they are in Jian, far off. So the question is, if these ones don't have to come out, where do you rehabilitate them? That's where the government has failed woefully in its move.
If you listen carefully to the PM during his tour of the Northwest and Southwest regions, he said the government is actually planning to rebuild and reconstruct the damaged houses in those parts of the country. Now, my next guest is a military chaplain. Now, it's very rare to have such a title on your neck. Jidas Chana, Reverend, welcome.
The same, thank you.
Right, and you come to us from the far north of Cameroon, where you spend time bringing the biblical good news to soldiers on the war front, and especially the Alpha section of the Rapid Intervention Battalion. It must be a tough task for you, right?
Yeah, you know, especially when we talk of the far north region. Permit me first of all to greet all the televiewers.
In the far north region, of course, right? You have the right to.
That is it. And you know, with the courage that the military body is carrying out, you know, to fight that terrorism groups, so that our country should remain in peace, as we have always been, you know. And as you earlier said, you know, each time they told you about the far north, we all know what those terrorism groups have been, you know, doing in our country, and to send somebody there is really something.
You constantly work under duress. You're scared every now and then, or have you?
No, I cannot talk about being scared. You know, before going there, I'm first of all somebody who fears God.
How long have you been working out there? For how long?
It's a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a year now that I've been transferred to the far north.
So you just say whatever happens, God is.
Whatever happens, but with the sure assurance that I'm going to succeed, because when we go to the divine constitution that we call today the Bible, you know, it is clearly quoted that we are not fighting for victory, but we are fighting in victory, and that's the good news that we are bringing to the military men. That when they go to fight the enemy, they are not going to lose. And that's why we have the positive effect of what we are doing on the ground.
That's in the far north region of Cameroon.
Exactly.
Are you contemplating taking your activities one day to the soldiers the government has deployed to fight the separatists in the northwest and southwest region? Can you bear that?
Why not? I want to, you know, I want to assure people that before going to the far north, I was actually going to the Manobe barrack, you know, to work with the new recruit and those undergoing stage. So any time the government or any organization are in need of me, I think I have all what I need, you know, to carry on activities over there.
Okay, and you not only spread the gospel within the military sectors out there, you also work for an NGO, it's called COST, and what you do is try and bring solace to women who are displaced as well as a result of the Boko Haram insurgency in those parts. You also cater for children. Can you tell me a bit more about COST?
Yeah, thank you very much. COST is actually an organization, you know, a collective of organization or associations. So there are groups of organizations who came together in order, you know, to join their forces to fight radicalism or terrorism in our country. But for now, we have been carrying out much of our activities in the far north. It's good to note, as I said, that we are a group of organizations that for example, I came under military ministry, which is a department of Campus Crusade for Christ in Cameroon, who is a branch who are specially made up to follow up military men psychologically and spiritually. And it's true that I don't know if I can say that channel that I had to I had to go and work with the coach who also have a department who carry out activities in order to follow up military men psychologically and help them to build their morale each time they are called to go and do a particular operation.
Okay.
And for example, we have mostly worked with B Alpha, just as you earlier said. Yeah, we pray for them each time.
B Alpha, that's the first B sector, is that?
We have the first B, and we have the B Alpha. The B Alpha is a body of the B who have been created in order, to carry on activities to fight against terrorism.
Okay.
In the family.
Now, I must tell our viewers that we really appreciate your efforts and your eloquence in delivering your message in English, because essentially you are French speaking.
Yeah, I'm a Francophone.
That's an indication of national integration for doubting Thomases who think it doesn't work. I think this is eloquent proof. Now I take you to Nairobi in Kenya, where the All African Conference of Churches is a continental religious body, met recently in Nairobi and issued a call for the African Union to urgently intervene towards resolving the Anglophone crisis. Would you agree that the solution to this problem may come from outside?
Why not? But you only depend on the context in which those people are coming in. I strongly believe that all of us need counselors. Yeah. For example,
we have church leaders in Cameroon.
Yes, why not collaborating with the church leaders in other parts of the world? But as for now, I think we should gather in our nation, because I don't think this particular problem is over us. We have strong men of God in our nation who are thinking every day, who are also praying, for this particular
They've been praying
situation.
for 3 years and nothing is happening.
No, I cannot say that nothing is happening. I think things are happening, but it depends now on us if we are ready to face the truth and allow change to come. That's the very, in fact, that's the problem at hand.
Let me give you a quote from the final recommendations made at the conference in Nairobi. They say inter alia that Francophones and Anglophone religious leaders in Cameroon should work together and show by example to the people that dialogue is possible even when we come from different parts. That's a clear betrayal of the fact that the church leaders in Cameroon are disunited in their contribution to resolving the crisis. French-speaking bishops, for example, are not in harmony with English-speaking bishops.
In fact, that is something very deplorable for our country. I listened to the declaration of the All Conference Churches in Nairobi. When they quoted it, I said, wow, that's right. We have to understand that the fact that there's a problem does not mean that we have to be divided.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to come together.
And when that division stretches into the church, is dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
That's why they're praying for nothing.
For example, we are the one to show example, just as they said. So if the church is divided, how can the society be united?
All right.
So I also support in fact, I support that that particular declaration, that we don't need to be divided. And I said it last week, that this issue of Francophone, Anglophone is what really caused us, in fact, it's what really put us deeply in problem. So when I want to address this situation, I always say there's a problem in Cameroon, and all Cameroonians, if you are a Cameroonian, as I as I am, then we have to come together.
Okay.
We should put aside Anglophone and Francophone.
I want to thank you sincerely for coming.
Thank you.
You're not going away, you're staying with us because we begin our first major talking point in a moment. We're going to focus on the question, are African nations indifferent to the situation in Cameroon as we speak? We'll take a little break for all of us to catch our breaths, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds. Thanks once again sincerely for staying on with us. Over the past 3 years, Cameroon has been grappling with a steady outpouring of violence from the Anglophone crisis, which analysts increasingly agree is escalating into a full-scale war, and that is if it has not done so already. And as the situation continues degenerating, African nations, and especially Cameroon's closest neighbors, are completely aloof. None among them is saying anything concerning the crisis in Cameroon. We will start on this point, and the idea is to try and pinpoint the reasons behind such alarming indifference. And we'll begin with you, Mr. Walang. Some have been quick to qualify the silence as diplomatic malpractice. Is that how you see it?
Yes, we have been really surprised about the silence of the Cameroon's neighbors to the growing, tension in Cameroon, which might quickly deteriorate into a civil war if it has not yet reached that level. There is this armed resistance. There are people who have picked up arms against the state, and the state, through its own unique method, is trying to contain that resistance. But we discover that lots of innocent civilians are suffering the impact. There are already more than 50,000 refugees in Nigeria, and more than 500,000 internally displaced, persons in Cameroon, of which I am one, sitting here. And
sorry, I don't need to laugh over that.
It's not a very pleasant situation. I mean, for you to carry your family, and migrate like that without knowing exactly what you're going to start doing in another place. It could be very traumatizing, But I don't want to get into that.
I'll just raise a point of objection before you continue. When you say the separatists picked up their arms against the
state,
against the state, it's because the state declared war, right?
Yes,
on them.
I don't know how to put it. Prior to the declaration of war, we had heard of cases in Mamfe where soldiers had been killed, and then the President of the Republic was returning from a certain visit abroad, and he declared war against those who were, who had the effrontery to kill the military. And the people said, okay, if you have declared war, then we are going to defend ourselves. That is how it moved along. But let's talk about the neighbors now.
Right.
Yes. I'm not very surprised when the neighbors declare or demonstrate such an indifference, a blatant indifference to this crisis. I'll start with a country like the Equatorial Guinea, which is a member of the Security Council. Surprisingly, Equatorial Guinea has a problem. The president has been there for a little longer than our own president. Teodoro Obiangema has been there for close to 38 years, for about 38 years. And there has been a lot of opposition to that eternalization in power in his own country. So, his skeleton that he's hiding in the closet doesn't warrant him to come, and oppose somebody who closely resembles him.
Yeah, well, look-alikes.
Yeah, there is that resemblance, you understand, in terms of administration, in terms of the way they handle opposition. Because if he's been there for 38 years, it means that he has been very repressive in the handling of opposition. Take Nigeria, which is a close-door neighbor. Nigeria even, deported refugees, Cameroonian people, residents were seeking, refugee status, asylum status in Nigeria. Take Chad, Idris Deby, it's almost the same. It's almost the same thing. In Nigeria again, the election that is there, you know, the election that took place a few months ago is highly contested. Okay. Yes, Atiku says he is the one who won the election, and he has been, you know, attributed with a Cameroonian nationality because of his claims. You understand? Several times. You know, you see the spiral is there. It keeps turning.
So we're in a region where the leaders are lookalikes.
The leaders are, you know, they have almost one and the same problem. Okay. And you know, you cannot be having leprosy and you are accusing your brother of not treating his own leprosy.
Thanks once again. You don't need to wear glasses, Tayong Elvis, to see that if this conflict spilled over, it would affect Cameroon's neighbors. Of course, Nigeria is already complaining it cannot cope with the influx of displaced people from Cameroon, yet it is not raising the red flag. Let's stay on the main road with that question. Why such blatant indifference?
Well, there are two factors, major factors that account for the blatant indifference we have here. The first of it is based on the fact that, just like what Mr. Walang already said, there are some similarities in the aspects of governance. You know, when you are in a dictatorial rule, for example, and you have neighbors who have a similar scenario, all of you reason alike. And then in the case of Nigeria, all the same. Now, Nigeria is not like compared to Cameroon in terms of leadership who stay long in power. They have their own problems. They have leadership problems. Election is being contested. Some say elections have been rigged and all the like. But on the other hand, Nigeria is playing a kind of business role, just like China in the world. Now, Nigeria is playing a business role as a neighbor to Cameroon because Nigeria is more inclined to its economic activities. You understand that most of the imports we have comes from Nigeria, especially that's the reason why you had the Bamenda-Enugu corridor road that was put in place.
Which has been blocked recently. And so if you look at it critically, even though you get some of the things come through the Tico, WAV, Beach, Limbe Beach and all the like, but you still discover that Cameroon is still consuming Nigerian products highly. And so Nigeria, just like China too, it does not want to overmeddle in the political affairs because it is concerned with its business transactions and the benefit, even though they are affecting the current economy of Nigeria now. And so it's just like what we call, it's lack of foresight because see, when you want to get a good economic atmosphere for business, security must be at the forefront. All right. That's just what they fail to understand. Now, with the other member countries, especially those of the CEMAC zones, you understand that they have one common godfather, that is France. And since as France determines who is where at one point in time, it becomes another problem because most of those who have been there have only been supported by the colonial master, that is France, either economically, and of course, when you live on the tendency of borrowing, as we have the issue of IMF, it becomes a call for concern with the safe franc zone, whereby you have some reserves that must be deposited in France. And of course, within foreign reserves, you lost a huge chunk of money for that transaction. And so because of this, France has an interest in making sure that it is better for France to deal with the devil she knows than the angel she does not know. And so the dictators who are around this periphery have been in power for long and they have a common dealing with France. So the problem now is, if France has to bring in somebody, France needs to be cocksure that that person will move in the same parameter. Else, the person might behave like Laurent Gbagbo, who came in under the guide of France and later on started revolving against France, which posed a problem and sent him to the criminal court of justice, though it was a criminal transaction too, done also with France being an accomplice. So it's a very dangerous issue. So the lukewarmness we find in the entire region is for the simple fact that they have not understood how far the conflict can go. Now, if foreign powers are coming in, which is not our wish, as Mr. Walang said, it is because, as I said earlier, international politics is an issue of permanent interest. And so if countries like America are coming in, it's because they have interest in the Gulf of Guinea. And Americans are the few persons who have understood that for us to carry out business in the Gulf of Guinea, there must be total security. And Cameroon occupies the most strategic position.
And Cameroon occupies the most strategic position. Therefore, with the current conflict, now if you look at the conflict in Cameroon, imagine someone who started with peace plans, then he moves to what we call catapult. And from catapult to then guns now to Kalashnikov. It means that the next time you might be discovering that the same military armored car or the armored car the military is using, you will soon hear that if care is not taken, these guys too could start using their own armored car.
And helicopters.
So you discover that. So some powers have foreseen this. That's why Africans need to step up their thinking. You don't reason only around your periphery. Okay. Cameroon says 2035, Vision 2035. There's a whole bullshit. Because if you implement the exact policy of Vision 2035, this conflict should have been arrested early on. Okay. But unfortunately, people think ahead in abstract. When it comes to physical and realistic thinking, the country is absent alongside with its neighbors.
Okay, Pastor, I want to get your input on this. You're free to chip in and contradict whenever you think it is necessary. Nigeria, which is just a stone throw away from Cameroon and a stone throw from the troubled English-speaking parts of Cameroon, is now raising the red flag. And in the meantime, Nigeria seems to be conniving with the government in Yaoundé. And I'm looking specifically at the transfer in January last year of the arrested Ambazonia leaders. Is Nigeria playing a clear, clean role in this conflict? Well, or is Abuja siding with Yaoundé to chill and ignore the crisis?
Well, you know, I will start by giving a kind of example. You know, when you are a father and you have your neighbor is also responsible like you, and then you people collaborate in a very good manner. Then you have your children. Then today those children have, in fact, my children has problem among themselves. And then when holding my children, I start beating, and for the fact that you are not like saying something, I started accusing you. That why are you not intervening? Have you not seen my child doing this? You know, it is
I don't get you. Pastor, you're playing games with your words, man. You're doing economical the way you want to explain this. Just lay it out. Lay it on.
Oh, okay, I want to, you know, we can talk as we are talking now, but I strongly believe that they have a diplomatic, you know, agreement as far as, you know, internal problems are concerned. You know, and we all know that
non-interference.
Maybe I don't know what have been signed behind, you know, between Cameroon and Nigeria, and we cannot force them, you know, to react as we want. Yes, for example, we know what is happening at the far north. You know, it's a problem started in Nigeria, and today we are like victims of what the Nigerian government have neglected. You know. And because of that, we have to pay the consequence. But for Nigeria, they understand what is happening in Cameroon because they also are suffering because of this. We have display who left Cameroon to Nigeria, and because of that, they cannot, you know, reject them. They have to suffer the consequences.
Okay.
And if today we think that, you know, they are not doing their best, I believe that they are working on that, and tomorrow we will see what.
I think it is. I think, permit me.
Yes.
I think it is extremely serious. You know, it is extremely serious to think that Nigeria, you know, is playing safe, because this crisis is affecting Nigeria directly, not indirectly. We said there are more than 50,000 persons in Nigeria, and the Nigerian government has started complaining, you know, against this. You know, and the role that Nigeria cannot be playing neutral, you know, playing on a neutral field as far as this crisis is concerned. Nigeria deported the leaders of Amazonia from there. You understand? They must have sufficient reason to have done that.
That's why I talk about
legal experts say that was illegal.
It was terribly illegal.
Because you don't hand over asylum
seekers to when they're escaping from, you know, their respect from their government. You take them and hand them to the person they are running away from, you know, to do with them as it pleases. If Nigeria can go that far, it means that Nigeria has the potential, Nigeria has the capacity, you know, to play a very favorable role in mediating this conflict. I think Nigeria should have even used that, you know, this opportunity to say, I have done this, and you know, there is an outcry from the entire world. It's not just, you know, people in Cameroon. The world has criticized Nigeria about this very act.
So let's look at ways of resolving
so I think Nigeria should have, you know, to buy myself over in order not to lose face, you know, from what I did. I should go in, you know, as a mediator.
Elvis, a couple of people think that Nigeria is scared of meddling in this affair because there is Biafra. If the secessionists finally got their way, it could be motivation indeed for Biafrans to amputate that part of the country, from the rest of Nigeria.
Well, that could be a point, but not very at the center of it, because the circumstances surrounding the Biafran civil war or the Biafran agitations over the years is not very exact.
Okay.
You know, we are talking at a situation whereby the crisis in Cameroon is peculiar just to Cameroon and nowhere else in the world. If you look at it critically, you discover that in the issue regarding Nigeria, Nigeria is playing a double-edged sword role without the forecast, as we're saying, because the error, I don't know the advisors who work around the various presidencies, whether they went to school or not, I cannot tell, but they should be able to understand that there are consequences of certain acts when you put in place. For example, you realize that when you get about, let's say 10, 15 ambassador leaders and you send here, you jeopardize your own economy, because we have over 6,000 Nigerian businessmen in Cameroon who are crying foul. Right. And I come from, I worked in Kumba for long. Take Kumba for example and Bamenda. You realize that most of the Nigerian businessmen who were carrying out businesses there were investing back in their country. Most of them who were renting had befitting houses back in Nigeria, be it in Lagos, Cross River State, Abuja, wherever, Calabar, wherever the case may be. So you realize that they cry as we speak that they can no longer do that investment back in their country. And so if you look at it critically, Nigeria is penny wise, pound foolish, because the money that would have gone back, custom duties of those canned drinks and some other products, loincloths and all the like that used to come from Nigeria.
Automobile spare parts and so on.
Correct. Vehicle spare parts and all the like. So it has dwindled. And so Nigeria decides to play a dirty game in the course of taking the leaders back to Cameroon. And surely it's a dirty deal that was carried out. Surely a dirty deal, because in Nigeria we know without any extradition treaty between Cameroon and Nigeria would not have gone as far as that is concerned. If the case was so precarious and they said these leaders were posing a threat to the Nigerian soul, Nigeria would have arrested them, put them in their own custody, tried them for violating the Nigerian laws on the land, and punish them.
Okay.
It would have been acceptable.
Okay.
And so it's a call for concern, but then Nigeria itself, those who work at the diplomatic service need to get up from sleep and understand that the consequences are coming. And if the war escalates, as we see, we start getting Kalashnikov coming in, the next thing is that you will soon get a transit market of black market of arms
along the
Cameroon-Nigerian border. And when these camps come in, Nigeria already has insecurity issues as we speak now. Sometimes you hear banks are robbed, broad daylight, in Abuja, in Lagos. I mean, broad day armed robbery. Right. It's common. Now, when these arms are being trafficked between the manufacturers and probably passing through Nigeria and then to Cameroon, it means that Nigeria will have more problems to handle with insecurity.
That's a scary picture you're painting there.
Or as a result of just that lack of foresight and analysis in the actions they took.
I mean, the consequences could be grave. Pastor, on May the 13th at the United Nations Security Council, and thanks to the United States, it got support from countries like Germany, Britain, and the Dominican Republic to bring the Cameroon situation on the United Nations security agenda. But unfortunately, it failed to prosper because nations like Equatorial Guinea, South Africa, and Ivory Coast, who are sitting members on the UN Security Council, blocked it. How do you explain that?
Yeah,
what does Cameroon turn to now that the UN, which preaches the need for preventive diplomacy, fails to focus and bring out statements on the Cameroon situation?
Yeah, I think they fail because they don't have, all the argument, in order to really bring out a solution to these situations. I know many people have been complaining to the United Nations, and what we should look at is not, let's say, because I usually define reality and truth as two different things that can look, in fact, it may look like, but has never been the same. People can, bring facts and turn it to be the truth, but you never turn the truth to be facts. So I strongly believe that what is going on at the United Nations is that the truth is prevailing. I said it last week that we don't need to go to the United Nations. We are Cameroonian, just as my brother
is that the truth you're talking about?
Yeah.
You say the truth is prevailing. Which truth? What is it?
I said we can sit down and talk about this issue and
Which is not
together we
possible.
are going to. Why not?
Because the government is not willing to sit down, man of God. When you say we can sit down, it's true. I get you. I'm sorry for coming in.
You have to watch. I mean, the full right.
The truth is, we can sit, but we are not sitting.
We can sit down, right? 3 years is on, and
saying,
the government is going round and round.
If we sit down, this situation will be solved.
Now, if we cannot sit down, should we go to the UN?
No need for that.
So
I
how do we
think
sit
it
down
will
to
be
discuss the
more
matter?
worse than what we have today. I want to insist to this, that each time if somebody from outside will come in thinking that he has the solution, will be far from the truth.
Maybe I come in, Pastor. Maybe I come in. I understand the way you're analyzing, because obviously you come from an area where obviously you are patriotic. It's a deal you signed to be patriotic for the nation. Just like all of us too, we did not sign any deal, but we're born to be patriotic, whether we like it or not. But
So
what I'm saying here is that I get this point here.
Would he sign to be patriotic because he works with?
Yeah, no,
with
you know,
soldiers?
that one you take another
Honneur,
that's double
infidelity.
Did you do that, Pastor?
I think we should work
Did
with
you
I think we should work, whether you take it or not. We are Cameroonian and we should work for the best of our country. I think you don't need to vow something before you say. In fact, before I do what I'm doing today, I was taught in school, you know, to be patriotic.
That's true.
So it's not when you engage to do something that you have to vow, and it's like maybe we are not doing what is right, or they are forcing us to work
permit me to say
our
that.
country.
Permit me to say that. I want to go to one anecdote that you used there, that a man has his house and then he has his neighbor with children, so the children are fighting and he says, why don't you? I think that the situation of Cameroon is very far from that. Let me use another situation, to
Go ahead,
relate. This is a man and his wife who are living in their house and they are quarreling. Neighbors are quiet because a man quarrels with his wife. The next day they hear the man beating his wife. Neighbors cannot be indifferent to that.
Yeah.
When the wife is shouting, neighbors say, "Wanna come here." Neighbors cannot be indifferent. You understand?
I think before the wife will even shout, I will be the first person to go.
To go there, exactly.
Yes.
So exactly that is what is happening in Cameroon now. It's happening in Cameroon now. See, we have a situation that has been ongoing for 3 years, okay, and we have not been able to solve it by ourselves. I'm not inviting foreigners to come in. I'm saying that if we are showing that vehement disregard, to finding solutions to our own problems, it is only normal that neighbors should start getting worried about that.
Maybe I come in maybe I just come briefly. I understand Mr. Walang's analysis. Let me just say it very clear here. There are indicators that the government is still dragging its feet in giving a lasting solution to this problem, and that's why people are being killed day in, day out. If you get government communiques that are not truthful, if you get the manner in which government keeps on going around and asking what is the problem when the government knows the problems, those are indicators that the government is not willing. The bitter truth about it, in my political analysis on this crisis, is that the crisis has gone above the level for the government to handle, for the simple reason that the government has lost trust on the perpetrators of this crisis, or those who are at the forefront of the crisis, like the secessionists and the restoration fighters, so to say.
The government has lost trust.
Has lost total trust. I repeat, total trust.
There is a problem of credibility.
So credibility is absent.
Yes.
That's why I said that where we are, people should quote me. That's clear analysis. I don't need to go to Harvard University to bring this analysis. The crisis, for it to be solved from the way the government is handling it now, needs a third party. Cameroon cannot handle this crisis as we speak from every indication.
Should that third party be some have described it as a lame and totally toothless bulldog, the African Union?
Not so. For the third party to come in, the determining factor of a third party will be done by both parties. For example, in the conflict between the restoration fighters or the secessionists and the government cannot bring in a third party. Now, even third parties that are opting to come in, for the issue to come to a clear terms, both parties must validate. Because if African Union comes in, which is even a toothless bulldog as I speak now, it's an assembly of dictators
with the current president,
yes,
who has modified the constitution to be there till 2030.
Okay.
And then Fattah al-Sisi
you realize now that
Egypt.
if a third party has to come in, both parties must visa it.
Okay.
And so if you opt to come in, and one of the parties says, no, we don't trust you, don't bother. It's for African Union. That one is a kangaroo system from.
So according to you, is the United Nations who is the best?
No, you are not getting me, Pastor. I've not quoted any third party. I've said for any third party to come in, both parties must visa the third party.
There are independent figures in Africa.
I'll ask you that question directly if you permit me, Elvis.
It's okay.
Is Cameroon's plight UN business?
In reality, Cameroon is a member of the UN.
Okay.
So it is 100% UN business.
Okay, when
To
the UN fails,
yes, to sit and discuss the conflict in Cameroon, it is 100% UN business. But how the UN handles it now, that is the problem.
Okay.
Because the UN, you know, we remember about a few weeks ago, you know, through the area kind of meeting, discussed Cameroon. Okay.
they didn't go as far as many people would have expected.
No,
them to go.
yes.
Issue strong statements to condemn the abuses
I think
sidelines of
I
the
think one of the powers in the US is already doing that. The United States of America has been very unequivocal in its, you know, condemning of the atrocities of both the Cameroonian military
and the
separatists. And I've said it here today, okay? The Cameroonian military is carrying out the agenda of the Cameroonian government. The separatist fighters, whatever excesses they are committing, they are carrying out the agenda of their leaders who are either, you know, wherever, some are in South Africa, some are in, you know. Leadership is about assuming responsibilities and not making excuses, okay? So they are carrying out the agendas of their various leaderships. But I want to laud the fact that because we have failed woefully, though, to solve our crisis within a period of 3 years, because there is a solution. I mean, I'm not an expert in problems, so I do leadership, okay? I think there is a solution. If you sit and ask, what is the problem? 20 times, one of the answers will be true. And you ask, what is the solution? 20 times, one of the answers will solve the problem.
Right.
As simple as that, okay? If it is not coming to that point, it is because people are naughty. There is an inflation or an overinflation of egos. You know, there are people who say that over my dead body, I cannot sit and talk with those people.
Okay.
And the thing will degenerate and more people will die. Even babies have started dying. You know, a sign of worse things to come. This is a pastor, you know, of the revelation.
We're going to come and focus on the Muyuka killing of the 4-month-old Martha Mbu. Pastor, when everything has failed, it fails because probably the government has its argument, and it is that, who do we talk to? You probably have more than 20 separatist leaders controlling the fighters on the ground in the troubled regions. Who do you talk to as the government? Who do you invite to the dialogue table, if one there were?
Yeah, I think as spiritual leaders, there's an initiative who was on the table with Cardinal Tumi in order to gather everybody so that this issue should be talked on the table. I think if that's one of the way out,
okay,
you know, to bring out this point. And my brother was talking about, I don't know if it's the one or the other side of this one, about the credibility of the government.
Yes,
I think whatsoever the government is doing, we cannot do anything without the government. The government has the power and the duty to control everything that concerns his territory.
Has he got the right to go wrong?
No, not to go wrong. I'm not supporting. I'm not saying that
the government got the right to make mistakes?
No, everybody can make mistakes.
Okay, I wanted to hear that.
Everybody can make mistakes, and if only you can recognize your mistake and repent, I think everything will be okay.
Okay, it's
true.
Yes, and many people have been talking about the, you know, the way the government have taken this particular issue. I think what the president said of calling out, you know, those whether you call it separatists or
separatist fighters,
or secessionists, you know, to come so that together we can talk this issue and bring out a solution is a very good initiative. That
In other words, that was a clever way of saying all of your leaders come out and let's sit down
so
and
that
discuss everything.
If everybody come out, even though you know some people say have fears in their, some people say have fears in their heart
because of the lack of the trust.
The people will be afraid. The people will be scared. You don't just call people, say, come, you know, get out of the bush and come and let's talk.
Okay.
You know, the people will be scared.
In order to bring proof, because you said
let's wrap up on this now.
Yeah, you permit me to say something about it. He said we should be practical in what we are saying or doing. You know, we have videos all over the national territory of some ex-combatant, that's how they call them, you know, who came out, who dropped their weapon, and today they are like, you know, understanding that they did a mistake by carrying out weapons, and today they are living well. Why not those who are still remaining? If they come out, something good will be.
For the sake of balance, you should be aware of the fact that there are critics who say that some of those who claim to have come out of the bushes to be resettled and reinserted actually. I just want to wrap up on this note. Let me have one word.
Lack of trust is there.
One word from each of you before we hop on to the next topic.
That's all right.
Elvis, I'll begin with you. The SDF has proposed its chairman, Nijon Fundi, as a mediator in the conflict. You think it's a fit or a misfit in this case? Fundi?
Well, for Nijon Fundi, I don't see it as a misfit because I understand that the aspect of democracy, we call him like father of democracy, even though CPDM says it's the President Pobia. No.
Okay.
So for the fact that Nijon Fundi has stood the test of time, the early 90s, you know, the turmoil left to right before multipartyism came in through him shows that he has some credibility that I think he should be considered as part of those who will be, as far as the dialogue is concerned, because he will simply be part of them. Meanwhile, others too, if we talk about the Canatunis who are not refusing, and then we get those in the diaspora. But as I said, all of what we are saying here has to be accepted by both parties, because when a party doubts someone who comes, if you doubt your neutrality, then it becomes a problem there.
Just to know that Fundi's, the proposition for Fundi to step up as mediator has been questioned in various quarters. Some say he's not clean enough to be a mediator in the crisis. Should Fundi be or not be the mediator?
Well, you know, in this particular case, there are people who will always be for or against.
Who are you for?
I'm not been so close to Fundi, so I cannot, like, you know, validate. Yeah, exactly. I cannot vote for Fundi because I don't. But if people thought that he is somebody, you know, who can bring peace, why not?
Okay, you go by the people's choice.
Exactly.
Mr. Wallang, briefly, Fundi or no Fundi?
I think peace.
In the middle.
I think peace is an entire roadmap. It's a roadmap that will be said. You know, it's not just, you know, like placing a phone and say this is peace. It's a roadmap of things that have to be done within a period of time for sustainable peace to be there. Fundi could be a mediator, but I still say that, you know, for 3 years running, we have not been able to solve this problem. If Fundi is there, there should be people also who can be able to hold the government of Cameroon accountable, you know, whether this roadmap has been followed within the period of time scheduled. Because like Mr. Tayong raised there is a problem of credibility. There is a problem of, you know, hidden agenda. Yeah, right. We could sit on the table and discuss like the tripartite in 1996, the tripartite that held, and resolutions are taken. Till today, they have not been implemented.
Yeah,
One of them, you know, which is very, very vulgar, is the decentralization that we are still struggling, and it is limping. It's not even, you know, nowhere to be found.
I want to thank you very much for coming and sharing those eloquent thoughts with us. I hope you're still out there and watching us. Don't you go away, because we'll be back in a minute to discuss the reasons behind President Paul Biya's continuous delegation of signature powers to his subordinates. Recently, it was to Elon Paul Chair and Amadou Sali, who are all rather staffers at the presidency of the Republic. Let's take a break now and catch our breaths once again. We'll be back in a moment. And so after Ferdinand Ngongo, that's the Secretary General of the Presidency, earlier this year, Elon Paul Chair and Amadou Saleh, all staffers at the Presidency of the Republic, have been given the authorization by the main occupant of State House to sign official state documents for Cameroon on his behalf. Is this information that took you by surprise, unawares?
Yes,
Mr.
it actually did, you know, but it's a normal thing in Cameroon. The delegation of signatures did not start today. It's not with, it isn't with the current Secretary General. The current Secretary General at the Presidency. No, not Paul is the Assistant Secretary General.
No, Ferdinand
Gongo. You know, it didn't start today. Marafa had been, you know, given that power
in the 90s.
Yes, even Mebara, you know, so many Secretaries General at the Presidency have had this power. But you know, it takes me by surprise because now it is including two other figures in that signatory.
Okay.
Which means, you know, there will be a problem of what we call unity of command. In the military, the pastor has an experience with the military. In the military and in leadership, they say leadership should be organized in such a way that you know who is in control, so that he will be accountable, you know, he will be responsible for the failures and for the successes of the organization.
Okay.
Now, if we're getting three persons that the president has delegated his signature to, you know, I am afraid that there will be this problem of conflict, you know, somebody signing and another one counteracting. I'll give you an example, although, you know, there is subordinate and boss. An example in the Cameroonian government now, two Anglophones who are Prime Minister and Minister of the Territorial Administration. That is the persons of Joseph Jongute and Atanganji Paul. Joseph Jongute, who is Prime Minister, Honorable Joseph Jongute, who is Prime Minister, goes to the field, northwest and southwest, and announces the good news. The president has sent me to come and tell you people that he is now open to dialogue on every other issue except secession. And people say, well, that is an initiative that takes, you know, understand. Exactly. Right. And Mr. Atanganji Paul goes behind and announces that
it was not really behind. It was.
It was yes. No, behind. Comes after.
Right.
Comes after the Prime Minister, who is his hierarchical superior, and announces that there is nothing that will be discussed about the form of the state. The present decentralization is what holds, and that is final.
That's a tacit way of knocking off even federalism.
Exactly. So you understand, there is this conflict of interest that still, you know, puts in place this issue of hidden agenda. Who is going to, you know, sign the signature on behalf of the president? Is it the Secretary General, who is Ngongo? Is it his assistant, or is it Sally?
Okay, Elvis, Pastor, we're coming to you, right? Take where you're thinking caps. We're coming to you in the GP. Is the delegation of presidential signatures synonymous to handing over power? That was what we heard when it was Ferdinand Ngongo's case in February.
Yes, it's not synonymous to handing over of power.
It's actually provided for by the Constitution.
Yes, it's provided by the Constitution, and I'm sure that those who put this clause in place had an agenda. The agenda was surely that you could rule for as long as you can, even when you are tired. People could be assisting you to continue the leadership on their behalf. That was the agenda behind this. And you see, if you look at the 1996 Constitution, where the presidential term limit was changed and placed to be to the level of unlimited, that's 7-year terms unlimited, it discovered that's where the agenda comes in. That even if at my old age and I'm feeling tired, I could go to France, I could go to Switzerland and rest, even for 4 months, while somebody is taking care of the country on my behalf.
But the President of the Republic has the right to take leave of absence.
Yeah, you have right to take leave, but the leave is regulated. You understand? Now, the only issue we have with the Cameroon context is that the leave aspect is not too precise like in Nigeria. Because in Nigeria, you cannot be out for more than 30 days, especially health leaves.
And you have precise periods where the president can take leave.
Yes, there are peak periods in Nigeria you cannot take. Our own president here, you could go in for 4 months, 5 months, case goes to nowhere, and nobody's questioning. So it's a call for concern. That's why I said that clause, if you analyze it critically, was put in place on the agenda that even if I go to rest, somebody should be assisting me doing things the way they are. Now, it is in the presidential system, but if it's under normal, it's in under normal democratic country, you know, when the president is absent, the prime minister should be doing the job. You understand? But now, since as we have a kangaroo system whereby the prime minister is more of someone who takes instructions. Now, you imagine that even for you to take audience to see the head of state, the Secretary Generals and the Director of Cabinet and the Presidency are supposed to tell you whether you see him or not. So at the point in time, they present hierarchically more than you, the Prime Minister.
In other words, you give us the impression that, well, if the President is tired and needs to rest, if he has to delegate those signature powers, it should be first of all to the PM?
Under normal conditions, it's supposed to be to the PM, because when they call it Prime Minister looks like it's what they call Vice President, though in the real context of it, it doesn't move. Because when it comes to the exercise of power, you don't exercise those powers like that of a Vice President. Under normal conditions where democracy is supposed to reign, when you appoint a Prime Minister, he now forms a government.
Okay.
Now, that's an issue you have with the foreign system you have in Cameroon. Because almost everybody's presidential decree, up to Secretary General of Councils is presidential decree. So you discover that Prime Minister presidential decree, Secretary General presidential decree, GO presidential decree. So there are times when you could give an order and the man tells you bullshit, man, because at the end of it, you were not the one who appointed him there.
Okay.
But in the case where you have a Prime Minister who now takes the responsibility as head of government to form the rest of the cabinet, you discover that all those under him must move in conformity with his prescription, because he can equally remove you the moment he discovers that you are not delivering the good. And so I don't know the system of governance that Cameroon has. Only God can tell. The issues in Cameroon are all extremes and extremes. So it tells you why we're in a situation whereby Prime Minister goes round, just like what Mr. Walang is saying. If the Minister of the Administration was appointed by the Prime Minister, that error would not have come in.
Okay.
But now he sees himself presidential appointment just like the PM. And so the PM can only be angry, but there's nothing the PM can do.
More powerful than the PM.
More powerful than
Pays
the
allegiance
PM.
to the President
Yes.
of the Republic, and so you answerable to nobody?
Nobody. Now if you see the Ministry of what they call a public contract, it's directly under the Presidency of the Republic.
Right.
So obviously you could be the Prime Minister, but you cannot directly control that ministry, because he's answerable directly to the Presidency of the Republic. So many things go wrong.
Let's watch what we say on Newsroom this afternoon, because even the National Communication Council is directly answerable to the Presidency of the Republic. That was
obviously.
That was an aside.
That was an aside, but it makes no sense telling the truth.
That Article 10 of Article 10 actually says that the President could delegate those presidential signature powers, man of God, to the Prime Minister, to administrators, or to members of his government. But I just wanted to note with you that, you know, when the President handed those powers to Ferdinand Gongo, who was the Secretary General at the Presidency, many ran to the conclusion that he was arranging his exit. Now he has added 2 more people on that list, so the country is governed by 3 people now. Is that the impression you have?
Yeah, first of all, you know, people were talking about it simply because they did not know that he's not the first person.
Okay.
When they gave that opportunity, you know, as my brother earlier said, before him, there are other Secretary General of State who that the President have granted that, you know, that power in order to sign other. Now, the fact that they have added other people.
Some have called it a democratization of the presidential signature delegation. That's strong.
Let me come back to don't disturb me. The fact that the brother have added other people should not be a crime.
Okay.
Understand? And my brother was quoting a particular, you know, problem. I want to believe that before that thing is set up, you know, there's a kind of dialogue or a meeting between them. I'm not at the presidential palace, but I think, you know, there's a kind of, you know, collaboration, so that everybody should know what he should do and what he should not do. He cannot just, you know, give a decree and surprise maybe the Secretary General with what they have first of all given to him. I believe that before doing that, they have already called the Secretary General and say, okay, I want to do this because of this. So everybody should know his role as far as that one is concerned.
Okay, just to note in passing that Paul Elungche is actually the Deputy Secretary General at the Presidency, and Amadou Sali is Director of General Affairs at the same Presidency of the Republic. Now, after Ferdinand Gongo had his own authorization given in February for Chair and Sali, it was in mid-April. Would you agree with those who think that the President is tired and is arranging his exit?
Well, I will agree with those who say that he is tired but I don't think that he is arranging his exit.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I'm so happy that people are seeing the reality now. The man has done it for, you know, before he became president, he was prime minister. And, you know, he has been president for close to 37 years.
Before he was prime minister, he was in the
he was
government.
Secretary General, he was director of the Civil Cabinet. This is somebody who has spent a lot of time there. At a certain level, you know, after giving in so much and after having been consumed by age, we become unproductive. We have to go and rest. I think I am even, you know, I would dare say that the problem, you know, the current crisis facing this country needs a fresh brain, somebody who is not, you know, attached, somebody who is free, unattached, to look at it freely, you know, and analyze the problem the way it is. Okay. You know, yeah, so I think that saying that he is tired is a, you know, it's a wonderful, I think it's a correct, very exact observation, but I don't know whether he's preparing his way out of the Unity Palace, and I doubt seriously that he is. There are many factors that prove that he's not preparing his way out of the Unity Palace.
Okay. Elvis, when Ferdinand Gongo got the authorization, he was victim of verbal lynching on social media platforms because people said that President Paul Biya had given Cameroon to him to manage. Yeah. Is that the impression you have? Because I have the impression that adding 2 more people to the list of those with powers to sign on behalf of the president is to check excesses that Mr. Ngongo may be tempted to commit.
The issue is not even the aspect of checking the excesses because before then we had only one person who was dedicated power. Now if they're adding 2, it's because conditions are becoming critical. As the Batibo man says, conditions are very critical. And so in this aspect, the thing is very clear that the head of state is tired. And if he's tired, if I were his advisors, I'll tell him, Daddy, I think we should rest a bit. Let us take some time. We could go to Switzerland, we could go to Indonesia, wherever, and have a rest. And let some other young brains take over. And get
but you will not forget that the anti-Sardina, that's the brigade, they're waiting for him out there.
All right, and then you make your country comfortable because you are the president of the country and you won the presidential election recently. And they say overwhelmingly with 70-something%. And the other 8 candidates had to share the other small percentages. So if you want that, it means you could be comfortable in Cameroon. So why not live there?
No,
and
he has been going to Vomeka.
So
nobody
so
stops him
just live
from
there and
going
go to
there.
Vomeka and stay you very okay. And from time to time you can come and visit us in Bamenda, and I will give you achu you eat and when, and you eat achu and go back, drink palm wine at the Mancon Palace and go back.
They're making a mockery of the president.
No, it's his country.
It's his country.
Let's be
he
serious.
should enjoy the country and enjoy the traditional meal of the people.
Yes,
he gets to even places like Bangem and he eats, how do we call it, Zabiken. He should move around and eat when he has retired, because that's what we are advocating for, so that he becomes now a consultant at the presidency. When people get stuck, they call him as the old fox, who comes there and unblock whatever has been blocked.
Okay, now, man of God, and that's how we move out of this talking point. The fact that the president adds 2 more people on the list of those who have the powers to sign on his behalf is an indication that the president is giving out powers, because they say he is so overly concentrated on him that he lacks time to let others do things for him. Now he's proving that he can allow other people to work on his behalf, which is a good thing for Cameroon.
Okay, I want to, I know I'm not permitted to ask questions, but permit me at least to ask one question. You know, have you ever known, let's say, a director of an enterprise who is there but decide to, you know, give the okay to the secretary, you know, to carry on his signature while being in control of the enterprise?
Pastor, keep on saying that you speak in parables.
Okay.
He's a pastor.
It's just
He's a pastor.
You know, and we really have the you know, the way of doing our things by following the life of Jesus Christ. But that's why he was saying that he speaks in parables.
It's a simple question. You should just go ahead and I will cover everything in language.
Let me say that it's true that our president is of age and everybody knows it. He himself knows it. But I strongly believe that he is somebody of experience. It means he can, you know, help us in one way and the other. Okay. And the fact that he is, you know, assigning his signature to some of his collaborators. It's a proof that he don't want to decide things alone.
Okay.
I mean, it's a sign of trust. I don't want to take it as a problem or whatsoever people want to think of. I think it's just a simple fact of trust among his collaborators.
Okay.
And I'm going to limit myself.
Yeah, but some people say you trust the Prime Minister to brave it and go to the Northwest and Southwest regions to preach the need for dialogue, but you don't trust him enough to give him the authority to sign on your behalf.
That's why I earlier said that all of them, they know where they meet and discuss about, the governance of the country. So I don't want to believe that the president does not trust the prime minister. Okay. They have their agenda and how they write about it.
Right, let's leave it there, and we'll move on to our next talking point. We'll go to Muyuka and revisit the controversies surrounding the brutal killing of that 4-month-old baby. Some say she was actually very close to getting to 5 months old on the planet, but her life and existence was truncated in that very gruesome manner. Let's take a break once again, and we'll be back in about 20 seconds. And so over the past couple of days, news and graphics of the gruesome killing of a 4-month-old baby, Martha Mbu, has been spreading on the internet like dry season bushfire, and on the sidelines attracting outpours of controversy with accusations and counter-accusations, while some hold that the Camunami is responsible for that sorrowful incident. Others argue that blame should be pinned squarely on the shoulders of separatist fighters in that part of the country. I'll start with you, Mr. Walang. The late Mbu, and that's a name that brings tears to my eyes every time I pronounce it, has passed on to the world beyond, but her image, just like the boy in Syria who drowned and the corpse drifted to the shores, is going to live on forever and tell the world that this thing needs to be resolved as quickly as possible.
Yes, thank you. I made a statement here that I'm extremely worried. You're talking of tears in your eyes, with regards to Mbu matter. I'm talking of, more sinister things to happen if this conflict is not arrested. And that was a very, very sad situation, to see a 4-month-old baby with a bullet hole on the head, an innocent soul that has done nothing, who is not responsible for anything that is happening, to have such an evil befall her, and I am a little surprised also with the way the powers that be are handling the situation. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
A few days ago in Bamenda, somebody was beheaded, supposedly by Ambazonian boys. There's a video and at Nkwen, Mobin Nkwen, the famous Mobin Nkwen, and the governor of the Northwest region, Mr. Adolphe Lele Lafrique, made a communique in which he stated inter alia that a head has been found in Mobin Nkwen, and the government will take its responsibility to do an inquiry and establish responsibilities. So he's calling on the population to brave their fears and collaborate with the forces of law and order so that the culprits will be found. Period. Brief to the point of starkness, devoid of any elaborate courtesies. And then there is another case now besides that.
What do you intend to send out that
I want
message? Should he have?
I want to compare it with the situation of Mbu matter.
Never, right?
Yes. So alongside, besides that, there's the situation of Mbu matter that, has been brutally assassinated, and the mother, is seen in a video accusing the military outrightly. People have been to the field and they're accusing the military outrightly, and the Honorable Minister of Communication comes out in a statement and starts accusing the Ambazonians and say they are responsible. Now, I don't want to state here who is responsible because I don't know, okay? But I want to say that the minister's action was extremely adventurous. I'll say why. The reason is, this is an act that has been committed, and there are, the population cannot be compared with the ministry. This is the authority that has all the resources at its disposal to do an investigation.
When he been blamed for this,
he
actually said competent state institutions.
It was so short. It was so short a moment. Let us be reminded that he made that statement about 1-2 days after the incident. It was so short a moment. Moyoka has a DO, there's police commissioner, there is the forces of law and order there who could have carried out an investigation. Yaoundé could have dispatched people, the governor could have gone. I mean, we have talked about this in so many instances. The minister was too quick with his this thing. But apportioning blame at once, okay, I think it was so hasty.
So comparatively speaking, with the governor of the Northwest region,
I want to establish that this is one of the problems that is inflating this crisis.
Okay.
There is an arrogance on the part of the government. Okay. We are sorry to say that. There is an arrogance. Leadership can be wrong. And when leadership is wrong, it should be humble enough, like Pastor said, to accept the mistakes and say, how do we get out of here?
Okay. Elvis,
Yep.
The execution of this very young and lovely child speaks volumes about the ruthlessness we can begin to expect to see in the evolution of the crisis. If you can do away with the life of such an innocent soul, then you can do away with everything.
Yes, and that is the more reason why I spoke with somebody earlier this morning. I said the beheading in Quen, the beheading of the man in Bamenda and the killing of this baby, both of them are hideous crimes, barbaric crimes. But if you put them on a scale, that of the child will take precedence, because one is completely very innocent and armless and not even knowing what is happening, and one person probably is aware of the surrounding environment. Now, when I look at the general issue, to cut the stories short, because I've been on the ground too, that's why I said earlier from the beginning of this program that the challenge we have is that some of us could go to the field. Not everybody can go to the field, but some of us could go to the field and some could just sit and maybe they draw conclusions in their offices. Now in this case here, I've been to the field. I've been in Boya for the past 3 days, still working on the track records of that issue. And in my investigative findings, without letting you know how I concluded, but my worry was the approach of the government. Now, every single soul matters. If this was in a developed country, I'm sure this would have had National Day of Mourning for this kind of child. So the government in Yaoundé is not the least serious, because when issues like this happen, you sit in the office and you draw conclusions based on a video you have analyzed. Now,
the minister actually emphatically states in his release that his communique is based on sourced information by competent government institutions.
Correct. That's what we're saying, that he said further that experts have worked on that video.
All right.
You get the point. If you look at the statement generally, you realize that the emphasis was based on the video and not on the ground. Because if you want to show proof of the experts on the ground, then it means that the Advocate General in Boya, the state councils in Moyoka, the Geotambe in Moyoka, special branch, they would have been at the scene. And if they were at the scene, as I said earlier, I told people in several platforms that we have the learned English-speaking forensic expert, who is Professor Orok, the director of the Boya Regional Hospital. These are persons that this child would have been conferred. They would not allow the child to be buried. The child should have been under the custody of that professor, Dr. Orok, in the regional hospital there, so that when you minister says it was a knife, the report that the autopsy will be carried out by the doctor will tell them, no, it's this knife or this kind of weapon. That's how it was supposed to be. But unfortunately, we did not see that. So I say that because the service on the ground would have been contacted, because it is something that was done openly, and so it should not have been done hiddenly.
Okay.
And so the government would have taken giant steps to arrest that, but failure to do that, and going quick to say, I need to say it's ex-Amba fighter. The ex-Amba fighter should have been under custody too, the wife.
Okay.
Under government protection for ample information to be carried out. Okay. But as we speak, things are just loose, and so it gives us the impression that the government is not serious concerning the life of this child, and therefore is giving conclusions in the air.
Okay, I've been struggling to get a translation into English for the word or the phrase arme blanche. and I'm still working on that. But then, Pastor, given that the incident transpired on May 20, that was barely 72 hours or so, John Gute wrapped up his mission to the Northwest and Southwest regions. Would you conclude, like some of us do, that all of his efforts out there were wasted? We've seen a surge in violence ever since he came back from the regions.
I would not conclude that what he went to do was in vain, simply for the fact that as he went, they were seeing some people who were not believing, in the action that he was carrying out. And those are the people, who decided, to carry on some violent actions. And because of that, many people are like aiming stone on the military. What do you want the military to do? What they are doing is to secure the place. So the minister went to do something, in order to bring peace. And when he was on ground, to sensitize the population, some people decided to boycott, if I want to quote it like that, what he was doing. And that's why we have all the violence that we are seeing today.
Briefly, is God still interested in Cameroon when things like this happen?
God is interested in Cameroon. I would say it. Even when everybody would believe that God is not there, I want to assure you that I will be the last person to confirm that God loves Cameroon and God is with us.
Despite the bloodshed.
Yeah,
despite
and
the
God is
violence.
not in accord with what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not happy with it.
Okay.
And we that carry what he wants or his agenda, to be established, we are also saying that we are not fine.
That God's time is the best, and we'll wait for God's time, even if all of
now.
the people are killed out there.
We are the ones to make God's time to be happening.
But we are not willing to make God's time to happen.
Let's wrap it up with one last question per person.
Okay.
I'll start with you. Actually, as we speak, one of our reporters, Meme Dominique, is embroiled and entangled in the controversies. He's actually been accused of having participated in a stage-managed scenario to get his story out. He was the first journalist to be on the ground in Moyuka.
Yes, I think the government is not learning from history. The history of press censorship, which has tarnished the image of the government so much. There have been many journalists being.
Would you say the censorship is the reason for the controversies around the killing of the little Nebambu?
That is exact. That is really exact. The censorship, because the government is trying to intimidate journalists who are doing their jobs.
The separatists are also intimidating journalists who are trying to do their job.
The separatists are also intimidating journalists. But I cannot compare the separatists and the government. Yeah. The separatists do not have a constituted authority. Those are those are many bands of people who are not united in command. If they ask you who is the leader of the separatists, we will not name one person. Right. It will be about 20 people, and there is even conflict amongst them. But I'm talking about a constituted authority that is there to guarantee the freedom of the people, especially the press men. We know of many stories. Bibin Gotara, Mimi Mefo, and now it is Dominique, who have done their jobs and wanted to inform people.
There are a couple of online influencers who say he should be arrested as soon as possible.
No, I think that the government should, learn from the past and allow Mr. Dominic to do his job, even guarantee his security. Okay. Come out clearly and say, no, this young man that the influencers are saying should be arrested is a free man. We will guarantee if anything happens to him, we will get the culprits and punish them.
Avis, as we speak, news reaching us indicates that the family and the siblings of the deceased Neba Matambu have vamoosed into thin air because the Minister of Communication actually said the father was is a former separatist fighter, and that all what happened with the daughter was score settling because he deserted the separatists.
Which the information has a lot of question marks in it. So if you find them disappearing, many of us even had spoken to various NGOs to make sure they should be secure in the first place. So we don't know whether some NGOs have secured them or not, or they have just taken to their heels, but it is advisable for them to take to their heels because the manner in which we see the things moving, when you conclude as such, I was saying that the government would have gone smarter. You get them, put them under security, you get the point. Put them under security so that first, nothing should happen to them, and then they could give you some other facts if they gave a contrary view to the media. Right. But now, when you go out and start declaring that they were ex-Amba fighters and there's a commission for disarmament, the question is, why did you, who know government knows that they were ex-Amba fighters, why did you not take a first step to rehabilitate them? Why did you allow them to stay where they are when you have a rehabilitation center in Boya and in Bamenda? So it becomes, it's very complex. And so if they have to take to their heels for security, I think it's but normal that they have to be secure, because where we are now, we don't know what can happen. In the case of Dominic, as I said, we are in a system where the government was supposed to call Dominic and give him an honor. Because you can't do something, you can't sit somewhere, you draw a conclusion, and somebody goes to the field and gives a report using his own means, when even the state media could not even go there, and you start concluding.
And not to mention that the father of the man declared that he is a CDC worker.
Okay.
So the government should be the one now to prove that he was an ex-Amba fighter by explaining to us later on why was he not in the rehabilitation center? Why was he there?
I can bet you a couple of months ago, the Cameroon army was accused of shooting to death a mother and children in the far north parts of this country. That's where Boko Haram has been very active. But a couple of months later, the same government which denied the involvement of the army came back to arrest and sanction some of the armies for culpability over the incident. Take our greetings back to the people of the far north. Pastor?
Yeah.
I need to tell our viewers that you actually come from the West region, but because you work so much with the military people, you actually look like one of them.
I think it's not because I went up there.
Briefly, we're at the end of the show
Yes,
now.
I was something like that. Okay, I want to thank all the televiewers, but I want to assure them that I'm here under the consulting who is working, in diversity in order to bring peace in our country, like rehabilitation of the internal displaced women, the children who are displaced, and psychological and spiritual follow-up of the B Alpha and the Premier B.
Yeah, thank you.
So
thank you sincerely.
We hope the bees truly repent as Pastor is here. They should repent truly. The bees should
When you
repent
come back
truly.
next time, we'll focus on your anti-tramadol consumption campaign in that part of the country.
Okay.
It's an interesting topic for us to dig into. Elvis, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'll sit at home and see you on other TVs. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I think we're braving the odds, and we will all be coming together. Sunday is not far. We go to church, just as we go to Presbyterian Church in Morocco, and give thanks to God to see our new elders on seat.
Okay, Mr. Wallam,
yes,
sorry for your
you.
IDP status, but hopefully you're coping.
I'm coping very well.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our numerous viewers out there.
We hope to see you here back here again very soon.
It will always be an honor. It will always be an honor.
And we are hoping that's the end of the show, right? We're hoping to have you back there when we come around again next week. Thanks sincerely for staying on to Canal Do English. Don't you go away right now. There is tons of entertainment all lined up for you for the weekend. Run from trouble on the double. Shalom.